What are investigators really doing? Looking through this video,
man,
obviously
hey, man, you ain't gotta look at us like that, man. Tyrone Koppel ain't with that, bro. What it is, guys? It's your boy Tyrone Koppel, 100% legitimate investigative reporter on scene. More than 11 pills, feet, baby oil. This and more as we dive deep into the horrors that Diddy put his, not gonna say put his staff through. That does not sound better. Let's do this.
Federal prosecutors just got another win in their case against P. Diddy when a male escort reportedly handed over a sex tape showing one of Diddy's alleged freak-offs. It's these freak-offs that are at the center of the federal indictment against Diddy. And now, prosecutors have even more digital evidence against him. But what does this alleged sex tape mean for the prosecution? Could even more tapes come out as we await trial? We'll hear from former federal prosecutor Nima Rahmani about this and so much more. I'm Sierra Gillespie, and this is Law and Crime News. P. Diddy, Diddy, Puffy, Puff Daddy, there are a number of monikers you could call 54-year-old Sean Combs, the once beloved music icon and entrepreneur. But more recently, he's been known as an alleged sexual predator after a series of civil suits, federal raids, and ultimately his arrest. Diddy was indicted by a grand jury on September 16th on charges of racketeering conspiracy, sex trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion, and transportation to engage in prostitution. In the indictment, prosecutors allege Diddy is guilty of sex trafficking, forced labor, kidnapping, arson, bribery, and obstruction of justice. The indictment goes on to allege Diddy showed a pattern of abuse, mostly against women, including verbal, emotional, physical, and sexual abuse, including the use of extensive grooming tactics. There's only one survivor mentioned in the indictment, though, identified as victim 1, so we don't know for sure their real identity. But it's very possible that victim 1 is Cassandra Ventura, Diddy's ex, who you probably know as the singer Cassie. She's the first one that put pen to paper in terms of allegations against Diddy, filing a scathing lawsuit last November. Cassie laid out a series of accusations against Diddy, saying over the course of their relationship, he physically beat her, emotionally controlled her, and sexually assaulted her. She also alleges Diddy forced her to have sex with prostitutes and recorded it. Let's be real. I know you're multitasking when you're listening to this video, and if you're out running errands, listen up. I have to tell you about the free app Upside. It paved the way for multiple other accusers to come forward. Since last November, Diddy's been listed as a defendant in 11 civil suits. Like Cassie, producer Rodney Jones, known professionally as Lil Rod, also accused Diddy of sexual assault. He alleges Diddy drugged him and forced Lil Rod to have sex with a prostitute. On top of that, Lil Rod says his accusations can be corroborated with...
Terrifying. One should always be able to choose what the hue of who they do. We're going to edit that out.
Hundreds of hours of video and audio recordings showing Diddy and his associates engaging in some serious illegal activity. The indictment also mentions recordings, saying that when the federal raids were executed on Diddy's homes back in March, investigators collected electronic evidence for their case. The indictment also notes investigators collected 1,000 bottles of baby oil and lube, which really puts into perspective the severity and scope of these so-called freak-offs. According to the indictment, these freak-offs were elaborate and produced sex performances that Combs arranged, directed, masturbated during, and often electronically recorded. During these sessions, Diddy would force victims to use drugs, have sex with prostitutes, and be recorded doing all this, sometimes without their knowledge. Again, All this was heard before Diddy's federal charges in multiple civil suits brought by survivors.
Ain't nobody
But back
know.
to the indictment.
Nobody knew what was happening.
Prosecutors alleged Diddy completed these freak-offs with the help of his
that's real.
working for the Combs enterprise. Not only would these associates help suppress the victims, but they also arranged the freak-offs by booking hotel rooms and stocking these rooms with required freak-off necessities like baby oil or personal lubricant.
The hell is that?
These associates would also procure sex
Three
workers
of the four
and
members of
IVs
B2K
that were given to both Combs and the victims after these freak-off sessions to help them recover from the physical exertion and drug use. As part of all this, Diddy and his associates transported and caused to be transported commercial sex workers across state lines and internationally. One such sex worker, an unidentified male, says Diddy flew him from Atlanta to Miami for a freak-off just last year. The male escort's name has not been revealed publicly, but according to TMZ, he spoke with federal prosecutors in New York on September 25th. He reportedly signed a proffer agreement and then divulged key information to prosecutors about this freak-off. He says it happened in May 2023, and it involved himself, Diddy, and another woman. The escort says he had sex with the woman while Diddy watched and recorded. And apparently, the escort says he has a copy of this recording, and now so do federal prosecutors. Since news of these freak-offs broke, Diddy's attorney, Mark Agnifilo, has addressed these allegations, saying that they were just threesomes by consenting adults. But is that what the electronic evidence will show? And how vital is this sex tape for the prosecution? Here's where we bring in former federal prosecutor Nima Rahmani. I wanted to speak to you specifically today as a former federal prosecutor because there's some news in the way of the prosecution in this case. Apparently, a male escort has come forward to the prosecution in Diddy's case with a sex tape talking about these freak-offs. What do you think would have compelled him to come forward right now?
Well, the fact that Diddy is now in...
Recently, I've reclaimed my virginity. Thank God I have, because...
custody and won't be released pending trial may
Tyrone
have
Couple
motivated
can't do real
people to come
news.
forward who
I'll tell
may
you
have
that.
been worried for their
Tyrone
safety.
Couple.
And whenever there's a situation like this, it can be victims, it can be a Me Too effect, right? Where there's power in other individuals who have come forward, and it's essentially a domino effect. And you know, U.S. Attorney Damian Williams, when he had that press conference, he actually put up a hotline for any individuals who participated in the freak-offs. And the reason why this type of evidence is so damaging for Diddy is you both have a witness and you have a video. And the video doesn't lie. And the irony is that Diddy took these videos apparently to have a leverage over the participants, but now those videos are going to be used against him in a very serious criminal trial.
Yeah,
Talking about
never tape somebody that doesn't know they're being taped.
About this alleged freak-off, the sex tape, and the male escort who actually spoke with federal prosecutors. He signed something called a proffer agreement. Can you explain what that is to me?
A proffer agreement means that an individual is going to come to the U.S. Attorney's Office, sit down with prosecutors, and have a conversation. And anything that the person who's proffering says can't be used against them. So it's a protection for the person who is proffering. Now, in this case, here's someone who's admitting to engaging in prostitution. So the lawyer for the commercial sex workers certainly wouldn't want the proffer to be prosecuted based on those admissions.
No, that's not.
Sometimes it's also called queen for a day. Essentially means that whatever you tell prosecutors can't be used against you.
That's diplomatic
and
community,
prosecutors would agree to it
No,
because they believe the information that this man has is worth it to use in their case against Diddy.
I don't know why, but I don't trust that guy.
It's routine because you want to encourage people to come
forward. Would not trust this man in a room alone. I would not.
Be used against them.
Y'all would open the door.
The sex worker in this
they would have to bring a white sheet in or something, and I have to put him onto he would be okay.
So not someone
he'd be fine. You just have to put him on the
make sure that the witness
drag him out.
That if they say something that is incriminating, that's not going to be the basis for a criminal prosecution. Now, if they find out information or evidence outside the proffer session, they can use that against the person who's cooperating, but nothing that's said in the proffer itself.
What are investigators really doing? Looking through this video,
man,
obviously
they gotta look at us like that, man. Tyrone Couple ain't with that, bro, man.
First you have to establish a chain of custody.
Not so that you know what I mean, like.
How would the sex worker have it, even, right? If these are videos
he working.
Diddy himself.
Let the,
how did he come to have possession of this?
Hell no.
emailed to you? Was it airdropped to you?
Come on, man.
Did you take the video? So the authentication, the chain of custody, that's very important. And then, of course, they're going to analyze the video to see what's in there. Now, Diddy's lawyers have apparently responded to this video, and they've said that this is consistent with what Diddy said the whole time, that he would engage in these threesomes. It wasn't an orgy, but it would be a threesome with a male sex worker and a female companion, and Diddy would watch and he would masturbate, apparently. So it's also consistent with some of the things that Cassie Ventura said. Now, of course, Cassie said that it was forced and she was raped and she was compelled to do this, and that's what makes it trafficking. Diddy, of course, is saying that this is all consensual, but I think those are the steps. The first is just the foundation, piece, and then really what is the video showing? Does it support?
That's why I got up out of there with the people I was running with. I was like, bro,
that
he was trying to
that coercion, which would make
do this, and
here's where things get really tricky.
Like, nah,
because,
you know what?
as you said, Diddy is going to say,
blind,
hey,
I'm
this
out.
was consensual.
I don't know.
They were into it. I was into
See,
it.
no
But we've
evil.
heard in 11 civil suits and now a federal indictment that it wasn't consensual. A lot of these survivors were forced to partake in these freak offs.
That's awful.
So how will each side go about proving it was consensual or it wasn't?
That's going to be the key question in the case. The case will come down entirely to consent or not. So the government has the burden, of course. They're going to have to show that this wasn't consensual. So obviously, if there's something that's said or done in the videos that shows force or coercion, that's game over for Diddy. If it doesn't, then the question is the victims are going to have to testify. And like you said, there's 8, 9, 10 victims now who filed civil lawsuits.
Yeah, he's screwed.
You know, how compelling is their testimony?
It's over.
I would argue,
it's
as a
over.
former prosecutor, that's a very
it's over. He's done.
Even if you don't believe one victim or 2 victims, because you buy the argument that they're trying to shake Diddy down and get money from Combs as part of these civil lawsuits, that this is all motivated by greed and it's fabricated, it's very hard to disbelieve the testimony of victim after victim.
Yeah,
it's telling
he's
essentially
done.
the same story.
It's over.
So there may be texts, there may be other communications as well that would come in. So
that
is the entire case as far as the U.S. Attorney's Office is concerned, showing that coercion, that force, because this isn't the type of case that they would have just brought just to prove the prostitution counts, because obviously prostitution is illegal. Prostitution is consensual, but there's a commercial component, right?
I will help.
But that would be a huge loss for the government if they only prevailed.
You know how many holes Tyrone Koppel has thrown out of his car? Not like by force.
A lot of people are talking about witness testimony and kind of speculating that Cassie could be a star witness for the prosecution. You know what I mean? But we have Cassie's lawsuit and then 10 others, accusers who've come forward. So kind of a significant number there. However, in the federal indictment, there's only one victim.
I didn't throw him out of a moving vehicle.
One.
You know what I mean? That's
important. Why would that be that the feds didn't include additional victims? And I guess
let these disagreeable hoes out.
Would they be calling more than one of these survivors?
Sierra, I have to admit, I was surprised. We've been talking.
Only after they let me know countless of times that they didn't want to be there and they could be somewhere else. I'm like, oh, word? You know what I mean? Like we be heading the Cheesecake Factory and she be talking, word? Yeah, hold on now. Let Tyrone Koppel got you. Here you go. Go ahead and open up your door, take off your own seatbelt. That way, go ahead and close the door back. Oh, you're going to slam. That's fine. All right, well, have a nice night. Tyrone Koppel, I'm telling you, bro.
About this
works every time.
For many, many, many months. And the raid of Diddy's homes 6 months ago, as Los Angeles and Miami homes, I expected a very broad, sprawling indictment, naming lots of people, lots of victims. And like you said, the indictment really only identifies one victim. It's clear that it's Cassie Ventura based on the description of that victim. So the question is, are they not sure about other victims? What's taking so long in terms of...
Look at the bright side, you know what I'm saying?
Getting the
at least he didn't have to go online and delete Cassie's age
far and away the most important victim
off of all the celebrities' birthday.
Relationship with Combs.
Like a certain
I would expect that the prosecution
person whose name starts with C and ends with Z. He deleted all of her stuff offline. You can't even find her.
Who's recently come forward just this week to talk about these freak offs. Do you think he could be called to testify?
Because
no question.
She was far too
a participant or a witness of the freak offs. Absolutely, maybe called as a witness by either side. If the government,
the number wise
that
for her to be in any of
a government witness,
the stuff that
if
But
Diddy's
I mean,
lawyers, and I'm sure they're going to have witnesses of their own, believe that the sex workers are going to come testify that this was paid but consensual. You better believe that that person is going to be on the defense's witness list. And I'm sure there's going to be some witnesses on both sides. Because
y'all like it, I love it.
The vast majority of people have spoken out against Diddy and against this violence. There have been a small number of people
in the background. Is that Ellen DeGeneres?
Him to say that
she
I never experienced this side of Combs.
But I'm wondering about the electronic evidence.
Ellen DeGeneres got good posture.
Freak-offs. Obviously, they're very intimate. It's people having sex, potentially against their own will. Is this something that would be shown in court?
That does not sound
It would be shown in
attractive.
Court. Now, obviously, this trial isn't televised, so
Tyrone Campbell does not.
But
I'd have to go. I'd leave.
It would be shown in court if it were televised. Obviously,
Tyrone Campbell ain't about to sit back and watch nobody else get get where they trying to get to.
It could be pornographic. It's still evidence.
Hurt in the background.
It's still going to be shown to the jury. So
they on their own.
There's no exception.
Tyrone Campbell, and I go the other way. I'm not
coming in because of its.
I guess that leads into my next question. As the prosecution is obviously interviewing some of these survivors in the case, talking about what happened to them. How are they going to prepare these witnesses for reliving this really traumatic event or events in their life, potentially even watching themselves on the screen be abused? How do you prepare for that?
The best way to prepare a witness and a community victim,
I'm not going to say what I was going to say,
is actually put them through a mock cross-examination.
Tyrone Campbell's not going to say what he was about to say.
These lawyers are going to be very aggressive. They're going to argue that this is all fabricated. This is all made up. The sex happened, but it was all consensual. So they're going to go after these witnesses and call them liars. So oftentimes what will happen is you'll have one of the prosecutors, they'll play the role.
Some stuff started going down.
And they'll do a cross-examination just to prepare the witness for what they may expect when they actually testify live before a jury.
What about Diddy's side of things? Recently, we've heard from his attorney, Mark Agnifilo, who said, hey, Diddy wants to go on the stand. He wants to tell his own story. Do you think that's likely that P. Diddy himself would come up and talk on the stand?
Defense lawyers say all sorts of things, and I did hear that. I would be very surprised because talking about cross-examination, that cross-examination would be brutal. Diddy has a history of alleged violence. Some of it is pretty clear. The 2016 Cassie video, of course, was very graphic, very disturbing.
That's really disturbing.
I think Diddy will get
very
torn up on cross-examination.
I don't understand
put a defendant on the stand.
How he could
usually come down to his.
How he could be that rich?
I don't think
and that foolish.
Is going to do that.
How do you get that rich
some of this
and still
PR from her
be doing that type of
trying to get out ahead of all the bad press? Just like the defense said that Diddy bought his 1,000 bottles of lube from Costco because he'd like to buy in bulk. I would, take everything a criminal defense attorney in this case says with a grain of salt.
Circling back to this new information we have from this male escort, he says that it happened in May of 2023, so just a little over a year ago. And the indictment itself lists a pattern of alleged abuse, all at the hands of Diddy, dating back to 2009. Obviously, we know other lawsuits go way back to the 90s, but according to this federal indictment, 2009. And now we have something bringing us into 1 year ago. Is that helpful for the prosecution to show it was recent?
Sierra, it's very helpful because you don't want claims that are barred by the statute of limitations. So under RICO and most
oh my God, Rico, I told you.
5-year statute of limitations.
Trying to build it.
Sex trafficking.
They was trying to make me look like I was that.
Earlier, and you can't make those changes.
And then people are like, well, why did you run?
A 5-year statute.
Why did you get, bro?
You need one predicate act within the 5 years.
That's all y'all,
once you have that, you can go back another 10 years to get a second predicate.
That's a road you travel alone.
An example I like to give is obviously it would be a state charge, but the statute of limitations for the 2016 beating of Cassie Ventura at the Intercontinental Hotel in Los Angeles, that's run. Prosecutors can't file charges on that unless they can show some sort of tolling or some reason why the statute should otherwise not have run because of a cover-up. But that's very difficult to prove. So what prosecutors are going to want to do is get as much conduct that is not barred by the statute into the indictment. Now, one important thing about RICO is predicate acts can be state crimes. They can also be crimes that are no longer within the statute of limitations.
Bro.
So that's a really powerful thing.
You got to get out of that.
It brings a lot of charges, it brings a lot of evidence in that you might not necessarily be able to charge individually.
Do you think that before this case would head to trial, that prosecutors are going to get a couple more calls, maybe even some more video showing these freak-offs?
Absolutely. And even when I prosecute sexual assault, sexual harassment cases, oftentimes harassers, abusers, they're not abusing just one person. There's lots and lots of victims. So we'll file a civil lawsuit. And just like Cassie's case, even though it settled the very next day, was really a motivating factor for so many others to come forward, because there is this psychology of an abuse victim. You know, they don't want to relive that trauma. They certainly don't want to testify in a very public way at a trial that's going to get national and international attention.
Yeah,
more
especially if
forward,
everything they're saying
does give those victims,
might
those
not be.
So absolutely, yeah.
I 100% believe he's guilty, but do I believe he's guilty of 120 of the people? No. No, but at least 40%, at least. Still awful. You know what I'm saying? But the extra ones on top of there, they trying to, hey, look, I was there, you know what I mean? I drank a sandwich and I woke up the next day. Anything could have happened, you know? You gotta be careful of that. Cause, you know what I mean?
As Sierra, I do expect others to come forward before trial.
Following Diddy's arrest last week, he pleaded not guilty, and his attorney Mark Agnifilo released a statement. It reads in part, quote, "Sean Diddy Combs is a music icon, self-made entrepreneur, loving family man, and proven philanthropist who has spent the last 30 years building an empire, adoring his children, and working to uplift the Black community. He is an imperfect person, but is not criminal." To his credit, Mr. Combs has been nothing but cooperative with his...
Nah. After we watched the video of him hitting Cassie, nah, bruh. You can't do that no more, bruh. You can't be beating females and then go out and then be like, I'm not this type of person, bruh. I know people that do that. And every time you see one of them, they have the most punchable faces.
Investigation, and he voluntarily relocated to New York last week in anticipation of these charges. Please reserve your judgment until you have all the facts. These are the acts of an innocent man with nothing to hide.
Super
He looks
innocent.
forward to clearing his name in court. For now, Diddy is being held at the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn. He's expected back in court on October.
100% innocent. And with that being said, all the stuff I talked about in this video, it's a secret between us. You know, there's a character I'm trying out. You know, Tyrone Koppel. Make sure to comment, like, and subscribe. Twizzles.